Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up show time with the international break finally over after 2 long, boring, painful weeks. Proper football is back this weekend and Liverpool are taking on Watford at Vicarage Road in the start of a massive run of games, and potentially one of the most important run of games I think this football club has seen in the last maybe decade or so, or something like that, because I think this is the run of games where we really find out what this Liverpool side is made of, and more importantly, what our title challenge is made of, whether it's built on sand or whether it is built on some very strong foundations that will have been definitely laid out over the summer, and I think will only start to come to fruition now. I think now is really where we see whether or not Jurgen Klopp and his team have properly prepared for just how difficult this season is going to be, and just how difficult it is going to be to keep the pace with Man City through this crucial festive period and into the hopefully bum-clenching run-in that will hopefully coincide with a massive race for the Premier League title between Liverpool and Manchester City. But before all that, we've got Watford this weekend. It's a game that in the past we haven't necessarily done that well in. In Jurgen Klopp's time at the club at Vicarage Road, we have had a 3-0 loss where Adam Bogdan was in goal and Martin Skrtel had a shocker at centre-back. For those of you who'd consigned that to the very dark recesses of your memory, I'm sorry to bring it up, but yeah, it happened. We've also had that 1-0 win where Emre Can scored a wonder goal, but I think it's fair to say it wasn't the most convincing win of all time in Liverpool's history. And of course, the absolutely balmy 3-3 draw that started off last season. So again, it's fair to say that this isn't the happiest of hunting grounds for Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. And while home results against Watford have largely been pretty fine, I think it was 2-0 in the season where we lost 3-0, then 6-1, then 5-0. We haven't got a problem against them at Anfield, but there does seem to be something about playing this side at Vicarage Road even, that does seem to cause Liverpool all sorts of problems. So I think the kind of game we're hoping for this weekend, the kind of thing that I think will be Liverpool's plan of action going into the match, is to do something similar to what we did at Selhurst Park earlier on in the season, where, yeah, we didn't really necessarily play at our best. However, we defended very well, and when the opportunities presented themselves to get the goals that would put the result to bed, we took them with aplomb. You know, I'm over that by now. It always does it. But anyway, in those kind of games, you're not going to get that many chances. You might not play that well, but you need to take your chances when they come along. So I think the ideal blueprint for this game is just a simple 2-0 win where we defend well, we take our chances, and we come away with those all-important 3 points. So who are the players that are going to help Liverpool get those 3 points? Team news going into this game this weekend. Obviously, it's after the international break. Normally, this section of the video around this time of year after the international break is just a massive long list of who's not going to be available for Liverpool and just how massive our injury crisis is. This time, it's actually kind of fine. It feels weird to come out of an international break saying that, if anything, we maybe even have more players at our disposal than we did at the start of the international break. The only doubt is around Jordan Henderson, who did miss England's game against Croatia. However, he is apparently absolutely fine, and it was only a precaution that he missed that. And the staff at the club aren't expecting any type of layoff like the one that he's just come back from. So he is currently expected to be available for this game at the weekend, but there will, of course, be all the usual tests throughout the week to assess how he's coming along and whether or not he is at full fitness and able to take part in the match. But Jordan Henderson was the only real doubt going into this game, apart from long-term injuries like Oxlade-Chamberlain and Ryan Brewster and players like that. Everyone else seems to be absolutely fine. The Brazilian players, crucially, are fine as well, because this has always been a stickling point after international breaks, especially when we play early on the Saturday kickoffs, because, you know, normally they play on a Wednesday night. They end up making that massive flight, even though it's via private jet, back from Brazil to England. They get about 1 day's training and they're all jet lagged. Normally, they're not really in prime physical condition to play on a Saturday afternoon. However, something that does seem to be happening an awful lot lately is that Brazil are playing their games an awful lot closer to home. This time, they played against Cameroon on Tuesday night in Milton Keynes. Answers on a postcard why on earth the game was hosted there, but I'm not going to complain about it. I am happy that they were playing so close to where they will now be training for Liverpool, because it does mean no jet lag. It does mean no massive long haul flight or anything, or Wednesday night games. They should all be absolutely fine, which is absolutely fantastic. Andrew Robertson was the only other player who was playing as late as Tuesday night, and he seems to be absolutely fine and will hopefully have a massive spring in his step after Scotland got a very, very good result against Israel to catapult themselves into the qualifiers for the Euros. That's enough international football talk already. Back to the club stuff. So yeah, there's basically no injury problems at all going into this game, apart from, like I said, the long-term absentees and the potential not quite match sharpness of Jordan Henderson. I do think there is a possibility for rotation going into this game, because not only is it the start of such a pivotal period where we are going to have to rotate, we will start seeing things again like 5 changes every single match and stuff like that. And of course, it's a massive week for Liverpool as well, what with the game against PSG on Wednesday night, I believe it is. Wednesday or Tuesday, I'm fairly sure it's Wednesday, but a midweek match in Paris where if we win, we're through to the knockouts. If we lose, we're in serious trouble. So that's obviously a massive game against a difficult opponent away from home in Europe. And then, of course, the Merseyside derby next Sunday as well. So it's entirely possible that Jurgen Klopp could look to do a little bit of shifting around with his starting 11. So taking a look at how I think he's actually going to line us up, I think he goes with Alisson Becker in goal, because why wouldn't you? The centre-back pairing, I think, is still going to be Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, because there's the potential argument, I think a lot of people are mentioning, that maybe we go with Gomez at right back and then Dejan Lovren at centre back, just to give Trent Alexander-Arnold a little bit of a rest. But that is a primarily defensive setup, and while it might work in this game, because I'll come on to Watford a little bit later, but they do have various threats going forward that we do have to be conscious of, I don't really think this is anywhere near, in terms of a challenge, the kind that we'll be facing against PSG. I think that's the kind of game where you go for the Lovren in the middle and Gomez at right back type of setup. So I think Trent goes at right back in this game. Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, your centre back pairing, and then completing the back line is Andrew Robertson. Again, maybe a shout for Moreno, but I think away from home, it's just a little bit risky. Home games with Moreno, absolutely fine. Games away from home against a potentially physical and or pacey side, I'm not really about that life, I'm going to be perfectly honest. So I think Andrew Robertson even should start at left back. And then the midfield, I think we should go with the 4-2-3-1 for this game, because I think while you could look at it and say away from home against a possibly physical team, maybe we go back to that 4-3-3. Recent games with the 4-3-3 setup have told us that actually that's maybe not a good idea. You know, we used it against Arsenal and we just didn't look the same going forward. We used it against Red Star and we all know what happened there in the away game. So I think 4-2-3-1 is definitely the best setup, certainly in a game against lower quality opposition like Watford, even if it's away from home. So my midfield pairing is probably going to be Henderson and Wijnaldum. I think there's a possible shout for Naby Keita in there, because he did obviously come back from injury right before the international break and he will need a start at some point. And I think definitely not in the game against PSG. I don't think that's the right type of game for him. And, you know, Merseyside derby, with his disciplinary record, when he's not quite there yet in terms of, you know, being up to speed with the league and the team, maybe that's a bit risky as well. So possibly Naby Keita in there. However, I do think I'd quite like to see Henderson in this game. I think it's the kind of game that Klopp will look to try and get Henderson into the side and also see how he fares in the midfield too, as opposed to being at the base of the three. And I think if you play Henderson and Keita together, both of them have just come back from injury layoffs, so I do think that is ever so slightly risky. I'd like to see Keita. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Keita. If we do, it will probably be alongside Gini Wijnaldum, because I think while we'd all be salivating over a Keita Fabinho double pivot, I think it's a little bit early in both of their stages of development at the club to be playing them together without another midfielder there who's a bit more experienced in Klopp's system. So I think Henderson and Wijnaldum, although I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if it's something like Keita and Wijnaldum or even Fabinho and Wijnaldum. And then the three that goes behind the striker, I think you start going full strength here. You go with Shaqiri, you go with Firmino, you go with Mane, and then Salah ahead of them. I just don't think we should really be taking any chances, because we still don't know yet whether those forwards are actually firing on all cylinders. So if anything, a bit of game time together might help them out. There's obviously that statistic that when all the front three from last season plus Shaqiri play together, we score a goal every 23 minutes or something mad like that. So long may that continue. We could certainly do with something like that continuing this weekend against Watford. So I just think, you know, really this is the kind of game where you want to get in, get the goals, get the 3 points and get out. I think it's a slightly too difficult game to be messing around and maybe putting Lallana into the side or Solanke or Sturridge or something like that. And obviously there's all sorts of things going on with Daniel Sturridge at the moment that I won't even get into. But I think we should be going full strength with that front four in an effort to get the 3 points as easy as we possibly can. But just how easy is it going to be to get those 3 points? Taking a look at Watford, they haven't been in the best form of late. Their last outing was the highly controversial draw with Southampton, where they felt they should have had at least one penalty and a Southampton player sent off. Southampton felt they should have had what was, in fairness, you know, a perfectly good goal ruled out for no reason. I just realised I haven't put Firmino there. Hang on a sec. There we go. A nice bit of set dressing, I suppose you can call it. It's been a while since I've recorded a video, so I forgot it. But anyway, Watford's form, they had that draw with Southampton where they didn't really play that well. They, of course, lost to Newcastle in the game before that at St James's Park, I believe, although I might be wrong. It might have been at Vicarage Road. So not some great results, although obviously Newcastle have had a bit of a resurgence of late. And when looking at the way they play, they're just a little bit sporadic. I think there's clearly quality there, and their position in the table shows that. They're not really anywhere near the relegation fight at the moment, last time I checked. But I just think they're not quite good enough to kind of get to the levels where Bournemouth are at the moment, where they're kind of not necessarily pushing to be in the top 6, but certainly knocking on the door and asking if they can maybe have a chat with them, that sort of thing. So yeah, their defence is just a wee bit sporadic. Sometimes they defend reasonably well. Other times they look a little bit weak and they look like they can be caught out quite easily, being caught, you know, standing in positions, trying to mark areas rather than players and letting runners get away. Sometimes they look weak from set pieces as well and stuff like that. And also going forward, there is talent there, and I'll come on to that in a moment, but I just feel like it isn't quite clicking on a regular basis. So it's certainly something Liverpool have got to watch out for, because with that sporadic nature, it's entirely possible that all those Watford players, that whole team, have the game of their lives on Saturday and they play incredibly well. They've definitely got the potential in them. So it's something Liverpool have just got to be careful of, and I think maybe the first 15 minutes of this game certainly, and maybe the first half of the first half, or even the first half an hour or something like that, will just be about trying to work out what's going on with this Watford team and work out what type of game it's going to be, whether we need to be physical and try and take the battle to them, or whether we can comfortably pass the ball around and probe and wait for goal scoring opportunities and stuff like that. In terms of their attack, I think they will certainly look to counter with Isaac's success and De La Feu. When they played against Southampton, they played a 4-4-2 with essentially, I guess, both of them playing as false nines, because really both of them are more suited to being wingers in like a 4-3-3 setup rather than playing as strikers. So I can certainly see them trying to use the counter-attack, although some of that was facilitated by the fact that Deeney wasn't available from the start and he came on against Southampton. So I think they'll try and use him as well. They'll probably have a combination of using Deeney as a physical target man and using those fast players to try and get counter-attacks going. So again, that's something Liverpool have got to be wary of, because Watford won't necessarily be a one-trick pony. They're not going to be a side that are just going to look to score one way and one way only. We've got to be careful, because they will try and get players down the line. They will try and get Troy Deeney being a battering ram through the middle. So all four members of that defence are going to have to be really, really astute, and also the midfielders as well, in terms of backtracking and tracking runs from deep and stuff like that. In terms of how I think the game's going to pan out as well, in terms of set pieces, I think they will be very, very key for this match, because looking back at the last time Watford did beat a good team at Vicarage Road, they beat Tottenham there in early September, beat them 2-1, and they did so using set pieces to their advantage. They were incredibly physical from them. They got in Tottenham's face. They caused some problems. They made them uncomfortable. So players like Gomez, Alisson and Virgil van Dijk are all going to have to be really imperious from free kicks and from corners to make sure that Watford don't really smell blood there. The last thing we want is for them to get a couple of corners in the first 15 minutes, for them to get some chances from it and just get their tails up and think, actually, we're onto something here and this is how we can hurt Liverpool. We want to shut them down early on, like we did with the game against Palace, where Van Dijk and Gomez had absolutely fantastic games. They didn't put a foot wrong. They won every header that came into the box from set pieces and stuff like that. If we do something like that at Vicarage Road, then Watford will just slump. I feel like they'll run out of ideas. Like I said, they're not a one-trick pony, but that will certainly set them back, and they'll have to take time to reconsider their tactical plan. And also, at the other end, in terms of are scoring goals. They don't actually look that secure in terms of defending set pieces. Obviously, they are a physical side. They're capable of bringing that to the game. But in terms of defensive intelligence and being in the right places and also just clearing their lines, in the game against Southampton, there were multiple times where they got themselves into silly situations they didn't need to be in. And that's actually where Southampton's goal came from, where one of them needed to clear a ball in a tight situation and just dawdled and dawdled and dawdled. And Danny Ings, who crucially was trained by Jurgen Klopp to be a gegenpressing forward, nicked the ball off them and set up the goal. So it's going to be crucial, the set pieces in this game. And I'm expecting it to be a scrappy tie as well. I'm not expecting us to blow them away 4 or 5-0. I think if Liverpool are going to win this, I think it's going to be 2-0 or 2-1 or something like that. So those set pieces could end up being very, very crucial to making sure we take home the 3 points. But I do think Liverpool will get the win this weekend. I do think we will keep the pace, maybe even catch up with Man City. They've got West Ham away, so who knows what will happen there. Maybe West Ham will do us a favour like they failed to do all those years ago in 2014 when we needed them to beat City to help us win the title. I'm not bitter at all. It doesn't hurt me anymore. It does a little bit, but yeah. Hopefully they can do us a favour, take some points off Man City, and maybe we even end the weekend top of the league. Wouldn't that be fantastic? But anyway, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then hit that like button down there. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days, weeks, months, whatever. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I will be back with all the post-match content after the game against Watford on Saturday afternoon. Until then, bye for now.